these are our teachers' pets here, Peggy, already getting ahead of things before even their kids are, in the second half of their junior year in high school. They're
I
making
call
sure
them
that
smart. I call them smart,
I'm not
not
missing
teachers' pets.
this one.
Relieve the stress by starting early.
Anticipatory.
Yep, perfect word.
Yeah, they'll thank themselves later. But maybe you're hearing your colleagues, your buddies that have a senior in high school right now. It's that are just getting started. That's not a fun place to be. You don't want to be there. So smart by you all for joining in now. So yeah, give us one more minute, everybody, and then we'll do some quick intros. And we will get cooking because we have a fair amount to cover. I mean, in some ways we're doing at least an introduction to the whole spectrum. Admissions, what do you guys need to be thinking about? What's the most important thing today? What do we need to know? Where should we be going? And then same thing, financial aid, scholarships. Because as you, assuming that a lot of you are relatively new to us, that's what we're trying to help everybody do, right? How do we thread this needle with the colleges that are the right fits for our kids, but also the right affordable fit for our family. Okay, cool. So let me do some quick introductions. Peggy, you can help us with the housekeeping stuff when I tee it up to you. But my name is Matt Carpenter. I'm one of the founders at College Aid Pro. I've been doing this for actually the class of 2025. This will be my 20th class. So you guys are my 20th class, 2 decades. That all have been exactly guiding families through this process. It's all I know professionally. It is all I have done. It's all I really care about. Professionally is just trying to help families navigate this pretty stinking, overwhelming, confusing, expensive process and do it the right way for them, right? There is no kind of universal right way, but help you figure out what's the right path for your family. And pretty rewarding stuff, and we have an amazing team. These are 2 of my teammates right here. I'm just north of Boston in our office in Salem, Mass. I got Brian that's also north of Boston, but he is also one of the school counselors at BC High, which I'll let him talk about his credentials. But to start with Brian, he's who I think is a little bit of a unicorn of sorts in the sense that he's been on every side of this admissions fence, right? He's worked at as an admissions director at Boston University and other colleges. So he's read, I forget what the number is, 60,000 applications or essays.
It's up there.
Yeah, whatever it is, Brian, right? Yeah. So he's been in those rooms making those decisions, who gets in, who doesn't, and why. And then he's been a school counselor at some of the more prestigious high schools in the Boston area, right? Seeing it from that side. And then on the private side as well. So he's been a wealth of knowledge for myself and for our firm for over a decade. And I think you'll see that over the first half of this presentation. And then we have the fairy godmother of financial aid herself out in Seattle. That's Peggy, our buddy Peggy, who again has been doing this forever professionally, but also has lived it and breathed it and sent her twins to college, which maybe is her best credential on her resume. So Peggy, if you want to say hi and talk a little housekeeping stuff, then Brian can introduce himself quickly and we'll dive in.
Yeah. So from a housekeeping standpoint, please put your questions in the Q&A and we'll remind you if you forget and put it in the chat. But you can be anonymous. We're happy to address as many questions as we can, as long as they're not if they're very specific to your family, we won't be able to answer those kind of questions, right? That requires us to get to know you and have a meeting and all that fun stuff. But we're happy to address stuff that we can. We might not get to all of them. If we don't, we don't. We're doing our best here. There's 3 heavy hitters working, so we'll do our best. There will be a recording that you will get tomorrow. So if you want, your spouse or your child or whatever to watch this, no worries, you will receive it tomorrow if you just want to listen to it again. So as Matt said, my background is on the financial side, but really dug into this deeply when my kids got into it. And I'll just say you will get through it. It doesn't have to be as crazy and stressful as it is for most people. And being here early, kudos to all of you, because 3 of us were talking before we went live. Like, getting ahead of this stuff and being knowledgeable about it, you are so far ahead of the game. So I will say it at the end, but keep the ball rolling. This should be the first of many times that you interface with us in various ways. So I will turn it over to you, Brian, for a minute.
Thank you, Peg. And yeah, again, my name is Brian Ford, and I'm a college admission expert with College Aid Pro. I've been working with Matt for more than a decade now, and with Peg for the past few years. And I'll just reiterate, you're in excellent hands with the people here at College Aid Pro. One of the reasons why I love working with this company is really the diversity of experience that we have in terms of the fresh opinions that we can provide. I joke with other colleagues that the Slack that I'm a part of is a real nerd factory. But I say that as a compliment. We really provide a lot of information for each other and then for our families. But I have also spent my entire career in and around college admissions in some fashion. Spent around the first decade on the college admissions side at a few different schools in the New England area, most notably at BU, where I recruited for over 21 states all around the country, read applications from all around the world for all academic and athletic disciplines. So really feel like I saw a full breadth of what it means to be an applicant and how an applicant kind of works through a process for a really competitive environment. I then switched sides of the desk, as we like to say, and have spent the last decade of my career on the high school side. Currently, I'm at the third high school that I'm working at. I'm the director of school and college counseling at Boston College High School, just in Dorchester, Massachusetts, just south of the kind of the center of Boston, an all boys Jesuit school. Very competitive environment. Boys apply to schools all over the country. And we have applications in over 45 different states alone this year. And so the relationships that I've built with schools and colleges around the country has really allowed me to help our families here at College Aid Pro. And we just, we're finishing up our first cycle of our Wake Me Up families this year. And we're able to usher, I individually was able to usher over 30 individual families through the process in terms of their supplemental essays, their personal essays, mock interviews, all that. And the families felt really like they had a good handhold through this very, very convoluted process. So I'm really excited to share my information with you and potentially get to work with some of you 2025ers, as we were calling you before. So yeah, why don't we get started?
All right, let me share my screen here. Yeah, so if you are new to us, we are College Aid Pros, we've said, and this truly is our mission to end student debt crisis by empowering families to shop smarter for college. And that's by educating you. So this is part of what we do. And as we said, it's what gets us out of bed. So there we are. Okay, so
handsome team, Peggy. That's a handsome team. I don't know that I saw that slide.
What?
So that's a handsome looking team there. I don't know that I saw that slide before.
Yeah, I'm always bringing it there, Carp. So, all right. So all of you should have received an email earlier today encouraging you to set up your free CAP account. So Matt will put that in the chat, the link that you see on the screen. If you have done it, awesome. Hopefully you have it open on the side. So as we're educating you about some of the things we're seeing, this is going to be after Brian chats with you for a while. You'll be able to see your unique situation and see if you're eligible for need-based aid. So it's pretty powerful. So if you haven't done it yet, we've seen a lot of you have, which is great. But if you haven't gotten a chance to do it, it takes about 4 or 5 minutes, very quick. It's free. You can put up to 3 schools. So we strongly encourage you to get in there and start getting the ball rolling to understand your family and affordability. All right, you can take it away, Brian.
Awesome. So again, I applaud all of you for kind of taking the first step here, or maybe it's whether it's a confident first step or maybe a shaky first step like this woman on the bridge. I think that's a really good representative photo. The first question I always get from families is kind of, when do I start and how do I start? And it's honestly a really good question. And first, what I'll say, what I'm going to talk about here is very much, it's a term I use a lot, but a 30,000 foot view. When we work with you individually, that answer can be very different depending on what student you are, what your interests are, what your financial situation is, all of that. But at the same time, we're going to talk a little bit about what are some great places to start today, who should be involved in kind of that big picture. And so, right, for me, personally, I think right about now, if you are a junior, is a great place to get started. Maybe you've done some big picture stuff in terms of visiting some college campuses. I know, obviously, here in the New England area, we're very fortunate that a lot of us, grew up maybe going to summer camps at local colleges, and so you've seen a little bit of a campus from that point of view, but maybe not from kind of that, oh, I could actually see myself there as a student point of view. But maybe you've had some exposure also from an older sibling or some programs that your high school might be putting on. But now would be the time to start doing some work with some intentionality of kind of looking at some different campuses, thinking about what you might be excited about as far as as an academic major goes. And then also, like, what are the restrictions you're going to set for yourself as far as things like location and things like that, all of stuff that we talk about with families individually. We're building that college fist. In terms of who should be involved, it's really what I can be considered to be a real team process. One of the things that I always talk about, particularly with the parents, is I want them to feel empowered in the process, but at the same time, the student is going to be the driver here. Ultimately, they're the ones who are going into the dorms. I joke with some parents that, there are no beds for you in the dorms. It is just for the students. And so we have to make sure that the student, as parent, is happy. But at the same time, we're completely understanding that in many cases, it's going to be that parent who may be fronting a lot of that check. And so obviously has an investment and a curiosity about where their son or daughter might be attending school and why that might be important for them. And more importantly, for many families now is what is the ROI on that? What is the return on that value, on that investment? What is going to happen to my student after they leave X school, and what kind of opportunities they're going to have. And so when we start this conversation, we very much look at it from kind of a pure interest standpoint. I'm already starting to work with a few junior families through College Aid Pro. Had a couple great conversations this week where we didn't really talk a lot about admissibility at first, because it's really important to me that when I'm working with families, that students are excited about the process and don't already feel apprehensive of, am I going to get in or am I not going to get in? And so we had, I think about one particular student that I met with a couple of nights ago. We had a great conversation about what does campus culture mean to her, and what is she looking for out of that? What kind of organizations is she excited to get involved in? She talked about a real interest in wanting to study abroad. So we talked about certain programs, in the regions that she was looking for that had strength. We will obviously get into the conversations with all these families surrounding building really strong quality college lists when it comes to the right amount of safety schools, reach schools, target schools. That's something that I really pride myself. One thing I tell families all the time is it's not my job to tell you where to apply to and where not to apply to. It's my job to make sure that you have a well-balanced college list so that kind of regardless of what happens in the process, you're going to be really excited about the options you have come March of your senior year. And so right now, that's kind of the conversation that you should be having. Yes, you can kind of keep in mind, and obviously there might be certain schools that are either kind of well above your academic profile or well below your academic profile. Doesn't mean you still can't entertain them, but you can have some realism in the process. But I always encourage families, try to look at it with that optimistic eye. We can always get into kind of the academic side after we start to build that first list. And so what goes into that, and I've kind of already jumped in, and the first is kind of building that productive college list. I've always said a good college list is like an accordion. It should get a little bit bigger, a little bit small, a little bit bigger. And so the first college list I build for students sometimes can be a little overwhelming. It can be upwards of 25 to 30 schools. But the whole point of this is I'm building lists for students and working with students to throw some curveballs at them. After having them fill out some information, give me an idea of what they're looking for. I give them some schools that are right on the nose, but then have some schools that maybe historically they wouldn't have thought of before. And the whole idea about this is when it comes time to actually sit down and write that personal essay and do all those supplemental essays, you feel like you have a really strong, invested, vetted college list that you've had time to work on. And again, that's why I think starting this process now is important, where you can spend that time in your junior year where you're not stressed about thinking about it's September and the November 1st deadline is creeping up and I still don't have my safety schools, because we've done all that work already. That doesn't mean schools don't get added in fall of senior year, but we feel really confident about kind of what we're working with because we've done that work on the forefront. We'll talk about academics. What does that mean for you? Not only what you're interested in study, but what environment do you thrive in? Are you a student who likes to get their hands dirty? Are you someone who's looking for labs? Are you a student who excels working in a team environment? Or would you rather be more of an individual? Are you thinking about an honors college that maybe comes with a dissertation component or a research component? Is that something that excites you? Or are you more of a student who you think you're going to thrive in maybe really small discussion-based courses? And so it's not only just thinking about the big picture academics, but those small kind of details as well too. We obviously work within the personal essay and the brainstorming and doing some reflection. We work really hard with our students on that essay, particularly as the test optional movement becomes just less of a movement and more of the norm. The writing that students do is more important now than ever. That includes, and I'll just skip quickly to that bullet, but the supplemental essay planning. We'll talk about a lot that, in other webinars, and obviously working with individual families, that's one where definitely it depends on the schools that you're applying to and what those essays mean, but there were some pretty unique ones this year. I always shared a few with some of the members of College A Pro. My favorite, again, will usually always be University of Vermont's of what Ben and Jerry's flavor ice cream would you be and why. I think it's a real kind of perfect essay for UVM and two of their more proud alums of Ben and Jerry. But it just gives you a little idea of what our students are dealing with as they apply to college now. We talk about the college visit strategy. As we start to nail down that list, what schools are important to you to visit before you apply, and which ones maybe we can wait after until we find a decision, and then doing the research on what schools do you need to be doing outreach to show that demonstrated interest, to really put yourself out there. Very similar to the way many of you parents have maybe advocated for yourself in the job market by following up after interviews, things like that. That's a part of the college admissions process too. And for many students, this might be the first time they're doing that. And so assisting them in advocating for themselves, really becoming a pseudo professional in that way, learning how to write a really productive but kind of sell yourself email to a college rep, or how to handle a conversation at a college fair or a college visit, all things that we kind of work with students on. So these are kind of those front of the brain characteristics that I think everyone thinks of when they're thinking about a school. So, what is the location of a school? Pretty obvious. But what is the size? So meaning kind of not only the amount of students that are there, the undergraduate, but also the overall population. So the graduate students, if there are doctoral students, what's the faculty size look like? Where's the campus type? So is that suburban, urban, rural kind of, or you want to be, right downtown in a city, you want to be on the outskirts of the city? Are you looking for kind of, that Gothic kind of experience in terms of, a BC or a Villanova, something like that? Are you thinking about being a commuter or a resident student? Primarily, we're seeing, obviously, a lot of students still want to be residents right now, but the commuter population nationwide is growing. Not huge, but it is growing. What are those academic interests that we talked about? And then obviously, those outside of the classroom interests. Is there a sport you're interested in competing in? Or is there a particular organization or study abroad, like I spoke about earlier, that's kind of a deal breaker for you? It has to be at the campus you're looking at because you want that to be a part of your experience. What we work with our students a lot is what I call those back of the brain ones. So, not just thinking about the size of the school, but what's the class size? What's the faculty or advisory to student ratio? So you think about a school like Northeastern University here in the Boston area, that can be upwards of 30 to 35,000 students, depending on the year when you include the grad students. But their average class size is actually under 50 students. And so you see that huge number, and you think, oh, I'm just going to be in lecture halls all 4 years. And it's actually not the truth at all. And so really doing kind of that deeper research with families we work on to get the true understanding of what a daily classroom experience might be for them. External location is something that I always talk about with families. So not only just the campus, but what's going on outside campus? What is the relationship between the local town and the community and the college? 99 times out of 100, it's positive, but you want to make sure that it is. If you're looking to get a job, is it easy to get a job if you're a college student in that town? Are there opportunities for internships locally? Are you always going to have to go back home to get an internship if you're interested in that. You know, what is there to do socially kind of outside of campus? And then within the campus, I think something that sometimes students overlook is that campus layout. I went to a small business school in New England, and something that I loved is that I could wake up at 7:56 for my 8 a.m. class and still make it on time, because it was a 2-minute walk from my dorm to the academic building where my classes were. Some students don't want that. They want that big sprawling campus, or maybe they don't even really want that campus kind of, you know, pearly gates feel. They want it to be spread out amongst the city and feel like they're just a part of the community in that way. I talked about it a little bit, but we talk with students of what academic approach they're looking for in terms of, you know, are they looking for more of a research versus a theory-based school, and what that means to them? Where do they feel like they would thrive, where they've thrived in the past in an academic environment, and how they feel like that might relate to college. And then obviously this is where like the admissions requirements come into play. Again, when I start conversations with families, I try not to talk about that too much because I want students to get excited about the process. I don't want to immediately start eliminating schools. And the other reason is, again, I will never tell a student to not apply to a school. We're just going to make sure that that list gets balanced out if, you know, we're adding maybe a high reach or a high safety onto a list. And I think one of the biggest questions that I'm getting right now from families is, you know, what does my process look like if I have no idea what I want to study? And so first, I give some real kind of credence, and I'd say maybe calmness to families that are maybe working with a student that is undecided or is between a few majors. The amount of students applying undecided and undeclared has gone up exponentially in the past decade, even more so since the pandemic. And also, I think kind of the attitude surrounding undecided and undeclared students has changed completely than what it was 15, 20 years ago. Much of this is due to the housing crisis that happened in 2008, as companies had to essentially completely change the way they hired early college graduates because of, you know, whether it be time or money constraints or position constraints in their company. College curriculums thus had to adjust how they were teaching those students to make sure that they were as well prepared as they could be. The example I always use is, you know, an accounting major. I think pre-2008, you would have found it pretty normal that a major accounting firm would have hired 3 people to do 3 different jobs. One to do the you know, the actual accounting, the books, one to do the selling, and one to do maybe that client-facing presentation. What you're finding now is they're hiring one person to do all those 3 jobs. And so there are some schools that actually love those undecided students coming in because they feel as though they can be more diverse in what they're able to study. What you're going to find now is even more business-centric schools will require a liberal arts minor, or vice versa. Even, you know, more liberal arts schools will require you to take a business minor, so that you feel as though that you have a real understanding and more of a worldview of your skills, and be able to learn a little bit more. And so I always say that right off the bat, so that family thinking, oh no, how am I going to be viewed in the process if I don't know what to study? Schools know how to handle that. There are even schools in the country that right now have majors that are called the undeclared major, and have a whole curriculum set up that allows students to find what they're looking for. But these are some of the questions and kind of some of the challenges that I put in front of a student if they say, I don't know what I want to study and I don't know where to start. So we talk about, you know, what classes have you done well with in high school? But I think even more importantly, sometimes it's what classes actually excited you and you felt you were passionate about. Many times those do link up, but you'd be surprised how many times that maybe they don't. And a student maybe, you know, loves math and gets good grades in math, but actually is more of kind of a history nerd and is thinking, you know, maybe that's what I want to do. I want to study history or social science or economics in college. I always challenge this, and I completely understanding that not every 17-year-old is, you know, logging onto their local news or a national news site. But, you know, if they were to look at a news site, what would their eye goes first? What would be the first thing that would intrigue them that they would want to read about? Would it be the main story? Would it be the finance section? Would it be the international relations section? What is kind of the thing that they're kind of keying in on? I always challenge students to the elevator pitch. And so for those who don't know what that is, but I feel like it's a pretty common term, you get on an elevator, someone asks, tell me a little bit about yourself, and you have the elevator ride to kind of describe yourself to them. And so I will ask students to do this exercise with me. Okay, You have 30 seconds. Tell me about yourself. And then we kind of key into why is it that you told me those 2 to 3 to 4 things that stand out? What about those personality traits, or what you're interested in and what you enjoy? And how could that potentially react to an academic major? And then things like, what do you like to do outside of school? What are your strengths as a student? And what skills particularly can you work with that you feel like you could maybe turn into a particular major? Are you a strong public speaker? Are you someone who's really well organized? Are you a type A student who likes to go from A to B? Or are you more of a kind of artistic student who really likes to work more in big projects? I talked about whether you're a student who likes to work in teams rather than individual. These are things. And then I will even ask, and even if it's just, that hourly job, I always tell, I worked at Home Depot in high school. And there were skills that I took from that, believe it or not, that allowed me to realize, like, hey, these are the things I'm good at, and these are the things I'm not good at, and maybe that I need to work on. And so we have conversations surrounding that. Sometimes we come out of a major with that, and sometimes we don't. And again, I assure you that that's okay. I'm working with seniors right now that still don't have a true understanding, and we've built their college list with that in mind to make sure they're applying to schools that have a great diversity of majors as they apply.
Brian, let me ask you. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Yeah, it will give me a chance to take a break.
I'm going to test your brevity here. We'll see, which is something you and I both struggle with, right? How would you answer? Because I think this is a really hard one, right? And something we get all the time. And I don't want to pick on teenage males, but it tends to be specifically with that. I see more of it in my personal experience of just what do you want to do? What are you excited about? I don't know. I don't care. These, and it's obviously it's not just the males, but where do you start there? Do you have a quick answer? And again, this is a tough one for somebody that has no clue, no baseline. How do we pull something out of these kids that are there?
Yeah, I think the key is, we start to just talk about, not even from a college perspective, but what are your interests? What do you do for fun? What do you and your friends do? What kind of gets you going in the morning? If I told you have an unlimited budget for a day and you could do whatever you wanted, what would you do with that? And sometimes that can start to pique a conversation of, well, I'd go play hockey with my buddies, and I don't necessarily want to play in college, but I'd love to be around a school that has that culture. Okay, great. Let's talk about maybe Skidmore in upstate New York, who has an ice pond skating championships every winter. And so you find ways to attach kids to schools that they get excited about. And I always remind parents, think about your own process, whether it was college or high school or anything. I don't think any person can honestly look back at their college process and say, man, I was so excited when I was 17-year-old to go to Bryant, because wow, I remember being I can't wait to learn about how to use Excel spreadsheets here. And while now, as someone in my career, I'm so glad I, got those skills in my freshman year at Bryant. The reason I went there was because I was excited about the student activities and stuff like that. And so I always try to get on the students' level in that respect. And now, as someone who full-time working in a all-boys high school, definitely have those conversations a lot. It's not that they're being lazy or they're being combative. It's they might just genuinely not know. And so, a lot of times it's, let's get on your level. What makes you tick? What gets you excited? And then we kind of go from there. And I think that's, again, where our diversity of knowledge at College A Pro really benefits our families, and that I'm going to have a lot of schools that I can throw out, but if for some reason I'm stumped because maybe there's a kid who's got an interest in insects and I've never worked with a student of that, I'm sure there's someone in our group that has. So
probably JP. Yeah, probably JP.
But anyway, I think another thing that it's important that we talk about tonight, and more importantly than ever, as we think about how test scores relate to college admissions moving forward, is academic rigor. And so a lot of questions I get is, what does my GPA mean comparable to certain schools and stuff like that? And I always talk about that you need to look at your GPA in the context of what was your academic rigor in high school. And so really kind of quickly is the difficulty of your individual curriculum as it relates to the curriculum at your high school in grades 9 through 12 is kind of the standard definition of academic rigor. So in other words, what are the difficult level of courses that you took that were offered from the curriculum, specifically at our high school? And I bring that up because it's important that you know you're going to be judged upon that and not just all of the school, all of the courses that could have been offered at you nationwide. And so if say you go to a high school that offers, say, 7 AP courses and you took 4 of them, you're not going to be judged negatively comparative to a friend that maybe had a high school that offered 12 AP courses and they took 8 of them because they didn't have limitations or things like that. You were judged by kind of what the high school that you operated in. And so that's important to know. Schools are going to look at college ready courses in those 5 major course areas. And so your English, your math, your social science, your lab science, and your world language. If you do go to a religious-based school, many times theology classes are a 4-year requirement for you. Know that those many times get lumped into social science. And so you are getting credit for those. It's not that the arts aren't important, or that gym isn't important, or that health isn't important, but know that many times they're going to be looking at those 5 core areas in terms of looking in some larger state schools, like for example, the University of California state system will be honest and saying, we're going to take some of those grades out. We're glad you had those experiences in some of those art classes or those design classes, but we're going to be looking at the core classroom areas when deciding. And then more importantly, looking at that junior and senior year. I always joke with families that junior year is the most important year of high school and college admissions until senior year starts. And then senior year becomes the most important. And that first quarter of senior year can very much make or break. It's a stressful time, and we're aware of that because there's so much going on. And it's crazy to think that kind of 8 weeks can make or break. But I've talked about it on previous webinars and discussions that the most I've seen decisions go one way or another based on those senior year grades. A student is on the line, and so we wait for that first quarter grade to come in, and we see how they do, and how they did kind of sent them one way or the other. And so it's just important to know that, and we've talked about in other webinars, so many trends have shifted, whether it comes to the importance of SAT scores, to AP scores, to what essays mean, to interviews. What has never changed is your academic rigor has always been the kingmaker when it comes to college admissions. And then kind of speaking to that, I get a lot of questions about the value of an AP or an IB course, or kind of an upper level course. So first off, if you go to high school that doesn't offer these, don't worry. Don't think that you're not competitive for a top high school in the country. Schools know the competitiveness of your high school very much from the relationships that the counselors are building with those colleges. That's one of the main things that I do for the high school that I work with. They have a profile that gets sent with every application. And so there's a good understanding of what's offered. But know that there is a huge diversity of curriculums across the country. I always joked when I was the college admission side, I would have loved it if everyone had the same curriculum and worked on a unweighted 4.0 GPA, but that didn't happen. When I worked at BU, one of my territories was Texas, and I worked with a high school that had an 11.0 GPA. It just, that was how they operated, and we had to work and build a relationship with the school to understand that so we could value and evaluate their applications correctly. AP courses are obviously important in the college process. But what I say that specifically, you'll notice I'm saying AP courses and not AP exams. And it's not that you shouldn't take the exam, but there is a major difference between taking the class and then just taking the exam. I've talked a lot about, the importance of different factors in college admissions, and the National Association of College Admissions Counselors just did a recent survey asking college admission reps all across the country of what are the most important factors to them. Academic rigor was number 1. The courses in which they got their grades was number 2. Things like personal essays were 3, letters of recommendation, SAT scores, things like that fell off. And it varies from individual school to school. Very down at the bottom of the list was scores that students got on what were known as accelerated exams. So essentially AP or IP courses. So why I bring that up is it is so much more important, or more wealth in your admission process to show excellence in an AP course across the course of a year, rather than just 3 to 4 hours in that first or second week of May. It doesn't mean you shouldn't challenge yourself to do well in those AP courses. And especially if you've taken that course through the year, highly encourage you to take that test, even if your school doesn't require it, to show your proficiency in that. But, and I know there are also students that want to challenge themselves by taking exams that maybe aren't offered as classes in their high school, but know that those don't move the needle necessarily as much as being able to take a higher level course in that area. AP courses within college admissions are a crucial piece because, again, it states to that academic rigor. You're challenging yourself within that curriculum. But I always just keep in mind the business of the College Board. And I think more than anyone else at College Aid Pro, I go to battle with the College Board on many different occasions. I never miss an opportunity to kind of show that, you know, they are a business and they are collecting money hand and foot. And I think a lot of you have already probably experienced that, whether it be with the PSAT or ACT, or maybe you've already taken AP exams. There was a recent New York Times article a couple of weeks ago that talked about kind of just how much money is made off of AP exams, and that in relation to how it is actually helping students to what they say is the biggest draw of AP exams, and that being getting college credit. Most schools now are only accepting 4s and 5s when it comes to college credit. Many of your competitive schools are only offering 5s and will only take certain courses as far as credit. And so when students are saying, oh, I want to take 6 AP courses because I want to knock off a bunch of credit and save myself tuition money, I think that's great. And then that's an earnest way to look at college admissions. But know that you might be the only person in that partnership between you and the College Board that's being earnest in that situation. And so if you're going to be taking these AP courses, you want to take them because of the value that I think is most important. And that's advancing your academic rigor and showing proficiency in a course at a high level. That's ultimately what's going to help you get in. And as we've shown within our system at College Aid Pro and in the conversations we have with families, get those merit scholarships because you worked hard to increase your curriculum and do well in those courses as you did that.
That's a good segue, Brian. You got a couple admission specific questions that I don't want to touch in the chat. You can get all over those.
Yeah, I'll dive in.
Peggy, you can take over. And yeah, it's funny. I just said last night something effective like College Board's technically a nonprofit institution, but they have some very high skyscrapers in Midtown Manhattan, which
and some high salaries to match.
yeah, exactly. When you know, skyscrapers in Manhattan, nonprofit, there's something is not adding up here.
Well, and I'll just tell you, like with my son, with the APs that Brian was just talking about, you know, he got some 5s, not tons, and senior year, no 5s.
Peggy, don't brag. Are you going on another
I
brag?
said senior year, no 5s, but my point of this story is it did not help him graduate earlier, right? He ended up graduating with tons of credits, but it doesn't always translate to, oh, my kid's gonna have a semester less, right? So just keep that in mind. So okay, so let's jump into the super fun stuff, the numbers. So let's talk about financial aid. So basically the key takeaway about how college is priced is that all these colleges are on sale. We just got through with whatever Friday was called. I'm forgetting what Friday was called, and then Cyber Monday, whatever.
Black Friday. I know, Peggy.
I can't remember. It's been way too long a day for me. So Black Friday, Cyber Monday, like everything's on sale. All these colleges sale all the time. It's just a matter of how they're discounting their sticker price, which we call technically the cost of attendance, tuition and fees, room and board, books, travel, personal expenses. So they do it in one of 3 ways. You can get need-based grants, which is free money. It's either endowment money, that's the biggest pool that it comes from, or federal grants or state grants. But by far, you're wanting to drain the college endowments if you can for need. And we'll talk about how you know if you have need. That middle bucket is also free money from college endowments, but it's based on typically grades and test scores, but it can be sports or talents, music, leadership. All the schools are slightly different on how they do this and what they look at to give their merit aid. So opposite, not based on financials, based on your child and their talents and their academic profile. And then that third bucket is self-help. So that's loans and work study. So it's a part of many families' college funding strategy. Not a bad thing, as long as the loans are a reasonable amount and there's planning involved with that. And then work study, right? but it's not free, right? Your child's going to work and get a paycheck that you will decide as a family how you're going to use those funds. And of course, loans need to be repaid. So those are the three buckets. So how do you know if you're eligible for that far left bucket, the need-based grants? Well, starting next year for the 2025 parents, and I know there's a lot of them on here tonight, you're going to be into submitting financial aid forms this time next year, and actually starts October 1 of next year. So you are submitting financial aid forms so the colleges can calculate something called a student aid index. That is that when they calculate this number, that's the amount they think you can afford to pay for 1 year of school. It's the minimum amount, minimum annual amount. So they take this number and they take their cost, which I hate to tell you, but some of the most expensive schools are ringing in at like over $90,000. So 90,000 minus an SAI of 40, you have 40,000, you have need of 50,000. But if you've set up your account in CAP, your free account, and you're looking at numbers on the top that are like 100,000, which Matt and I have seen over and over and over again through the years, you don't have any need because that 90,000 minus 100,000 is obviously a negative number. That doesn't mean you can't get discounts. You're going to be looking at merit, right? But that's how it works. And just because you have need of 50,000 for my example, or 40,000, doesn't mean the college is going to swoop in and say, here, Jones family, here's a big fat need-based grant for $50,000. Some might, but others will package it in different ways. But that's why you're submitting financial aid forms. So this SAI can be calculated. So very important to submit those forms. So very high level here, what makes up the SAI? There's assets and there's income. Non-retirement assets are the asset piece. So 401k, 403b, IRAs, if you've been slacking money away for retirement, that's awesome. That's not going to be part of this calculation, but everything else is. And a very common question is 529s. If parents own the 529 with your child as the beneficiary, the most common way, that's an asset of the parent. Because remember, they're going to ask about parent assets and student assets. So you want to make sure that that's a parent asset. If grandma owns a 529, that's grandma's asset. It's not even part of the picture. The key takeaway there is parental assets. Parent-owned 529s are a parent asset as opposed to a student asset. Custodial accounts, that's a student asset. And the reason why it really matters is parent assets are assessed at a much lower rate than students. Student are 20 or 25%, whereas parents are at most a little bit over 5%, excuse me. Real estate is also part of this, the equity in your real estate. So it's very important not to overvalue. You don't want to make up numbers that are lies, but you don't want to overvalue the home you live in because some schools will look at that equity and also other real estate. I saw a question in the Q&A about real estate. That's going to be part of the picture when they're calculating an SAI. And assets are assessed literally, if you want to be this exacting, the day you hit submit. Now, income, the other piece of this, is a 2-year look back, and we call that prior year. So we have a lot of 25s on here. You are in the tax year that you're going to be supplying information for in fall 2024. So we're almost at the end of the year, obviously, but be careful. Don't create huge capital gains if you can avoid it. Don't increase your adjusted gross income. If you get a promotion, that's awesome. Obviously, you're not going to turn it down, but just be strategic about that. And then student income is also part of it, but you can see here on the slide in the federal calculation, kids can make over $9,400 and it's a wash. So usually doesn't move the needle. And I know we have some 26s, you can see you're about to be in the tax year that matters. So it's good that you're on here and you're learning ahead of time. So we got the income and the asset piece. So as I said a few minutes ago, if you're looking at your CAP account and you've got some pretty high SAIs, but you don't want to pay $90,000 a year, or you can't, nothing to be embarrassed about. That's a huge sum of money. What are you going to do? Well, that's when you're going to look at this other form of discounting, which is the merit aid. So I'm going to let Matt chime in here and talk about that.
And Peg, do me a favor, you know what I'll do just in the sense of time here. If I could share my screen, I'll just dive right into the platform and kind of coach this piece of it up through there. So, I mean, look, to Peg's point, there's just going to be a percentage of you that there's no magic wand that we can wave, you can wave, anyone can wave. You're not going to be eligible for need-based financial aid. And I saw that most of you already set up your MyCap accounts, and that's awesome. So you've already kind of confirmed or denied your, and I'm putting that, I just got another request. I'm putting that link in the chat here. The first thing that you should do, in my opinion, right, in starting this kind of process is, where are you on this financial aid eligibility spectrum? Don't listen to your neighbor, your colleague, you know, your brother, your sister. Find out how this is going to play out for you guys, right? And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to be the source of truth. So once you complete your account, you'll see right away, well, here's my family's SAI. Are we going to be eligible for financial aid? How much? At which colleges? Are we going to be expected to pay sticker price, or are we going to pay a fraction of sticker price, right? And this is a family of 4 from Massachusetts that's kind of right down the fairway, right, in terms of middle class. They are a split household family. This is a divorced family. So that is why, one of the reasons why we see that this $90,000 college at Amherst is going to be more affordable than the in-state flagship university, right? The in-state state school is going to be more expensive than the $90,000 private college. And again, this is not a terribly wonky situation, but it's so counterintuitive that a lot of families that are in this situation, they wouldn't even let their kids apply to these schools that appear to be unaffordable, right? So we want to make sure that as you're starting your college search, you know where you are on this spectrum. But to the point that I'm talking to specifically, Peg mentioned the fact that some of you are probably looking at your accounts right now and you're seeing your SAIs are 100,000, 150,000. There are no scholarships at Amherst College. There are no scholarships at any Ivy League institution. So they're going to be telling you that you're going to be paying full sticker price if you're accepted in there. And you will be. But this is where we want you to leverage the platform, leverage the technology and the expertise that's kind of baked in here. If you go to this search for schools button and you hit the advanced school search, you can start to look for schools that are going to give you discounts just, you know, because, who's going to give my kid a scholarship? It's all baked in here. You can say, my kid probably wants to be close to home. They probably want a small school. Maybe they're going to major in bio. And again, it doesn't matter. You can put in all of those filters, none of the filters, but then you can sort just based on, well, who's going to give your kid scholarships just based on your credentials, regardless of your family's financial situation, right? Here's my alma mater, Stonehill. Well, for this kid, pretty smart kid, they're going to get a $32,000 scholarship regardless of the financial resources of this family. And it's also interesting to use the platform as a sandbox, right? Where we could go to this profile section here and just kind of say, hey, our ACT is at a 24. What if it went to a 27? How would that impact our merit-based scholarships? Or our GPAs at a 3.6? What if it went to a 3.9? How would that impact scholarships? And another thing that I think is just noteworthy as you guys are exploring this is, if you click into any college, for every college in the country, we have every single scholarship that they offer, the qualifications for each, and we're really good at projecting, well, how much is your kid likely going to get, if anything. So this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg, but I want to make sure that you guys understand what you all have access to. And hopefully, as we're talking about the admissions piece and giving you a really quick high-level understanding of the financial aid and scholarship piece, this is how it's going to work for you, right? Something that we talk about multiple times a week is that we want you to understand how this works from a high level, but it's really important that you understand, well, how's this going to work for my family? You might hear that people say, well, Amherst College is really generous. Okay. Does that mean it's going to be a affordable school for you? Or is it going to be the most expensive school on your list? And there's going to be a huge variation there. So that's what we're trying to cut through. There's a whole bunch more to share here, But that's, again, I think hopefully giving you some understanding of, number one, the platform, and number two, if we're not eligible for need-based financial aid, how can we go figure out where we're going to get discounts and how much?
All right. All right, so let's quickly just touch on the 2 financial aid forms that you are going to be looking at a year from now, like I mentioned. The first form is the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. Almost every school in the country requires this form. Most schools in the country only require this form. There's a second form I'll talk about in a minute that is required along with the FAFSA. So when you submit this, they calculate what's called a federal SAI that Matt just showed you in our software. And then they use that in that equation, cost of attendance minus SAI equals need. So very important to get. There are many reasons. We have a whole slide on this that we use in other presentations about why you should be submitting the FAFSA. Just rest assured you should be submitting it for a myriad of reasons. This year it goes live December, but that doesn't, we don't need to go into any of that with you guys. You've avoided that drama. Next year it should be October 1. That's typically when it goes live. It's going to be based on 2023 taxes for you parents that have a junior, okay? And only one parent submits the FAFSA if you're divorced or separated. That's the custodial parent. The custodial parent is the parent that provides the most financial support. When you are about to submit that form, a year look back in time, who provided the most support. So that's just, you can jot that down. We don't need to get in the weeds on it right now, but it's something to keep in mind if you're divorced or separated, because if you're 50-50, there's some major planning opportunities that could mean a lot more money being saved by you and received from the college in the way of packages, and we can support you on that. You will need to get an FSA ID before you submit the FAFSA. Here's the link, but you don't need to do this tomorrow, right? We're pushing our senior families to get this done right away. You don't need to do that, but that is something you will need down the road. The second form is called the CSS profile. So as I just said, this is going to be submitted with the FAFSA. So you're going to submit the FAFSA to a whole bunch of schools. You're going to go into the CSS profile, which is another part of College Board that we 3 of us were just talking about. And you are going to do this form, which is much longer than the FAFSA, much more invasive, and the more is included in this form. Most people, JP, who's on our team, who used to be the head of financial aid at Southern Cal, said the stats are about 3 out of 4 people make a mistake between the FAFSA and the CSS, because it's a lot. It's a lot to do and it's confusing. So just keep that in mind. And these could be mistakes that cost people a lot of money in aid. So the CSS, mostly private schools, there's a few publics. You're going to submit this as well, and they're going to calculate that second SAI that Matt showed you, the institutional SAI. They're going to use that to give out their endowment money. So there's some key differences. They look at the equity in the home you live in. The FAFSA doesn't. And most of these schools, if you're divorced or separated, they look at both parents, which obviously can create a much higher SAI. So these are all things for you to understand and start thinking about. Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. What does that mean for my family? Get your information into our tool and start looking at this and figuring it out, because you will be way ahead of the game starting to work through this stuff. All right, so I will turn over our last slide to Matt to wrap up here.
All right, so over the next 2 hours, I want to unpack this slide. That was just for you, Peggy. Just for you,
thanks, buddy.
30 seconds, or else Peggy will give me this thing guy real quick. But the seed that I like to plant, and what did I say, Peggy? You said you like, I like to say this when students are kindergartners, right?
Yeah. Kindergarten, we only spend an hour on this slide. Yeah.
Even that's too late. But if you're even thinking about having children, but here's the takeaway, right? Here's the headline. Once you're, fast forward, I know most of you 2025, fast forward a year change from now, your kids are going to get accepted into these colleges. They're going to give you your financial offer. Your mindset needs to be, I am not taking the first offer. I am going to negotiate. We can't use the word negotiate. We are appealing, but I am going to appeal that first offer and get more money than what you put in front of me initially. And there was a whole method to that madness. But what I like to do at the early stages, at the infant stages, if you will, Peggy, is plant the seed, okay, that you do not have to accept that first offer. And there is a way to be really smart, and we're pretty stinking good at it, at going back to these colleges and get more money than whatever they put in front of you initially. So, and that's it, Peggy. That's done. But let me share my screen quick if you'll allow it.
Yes, I will.
So, as we talked about here, right? We mentioned it at the top. We always like to reward our and for those of you that are kind of seeing us for the first time, welcome and thank you. And I hope you continue to engage with us. And you'll see that we always like to give some type of love, extra love to our folks that show up live with us, right? So here's what I'm going to recommend. I'm going to make a firm recommendation tonight, and you can kind of self-identify who you guys are. We put folks into two broad buckets, which is obviously overgeneralizing, oversimplifying. But if you're a DIYer, okay, I'm going to put you in one of these first two buckets, right? And if you're someone that's like, I'm all over this, I can tackle this on my own, I just need the best tools possible, sign up, upgrade our software. Actually, I saw that a few of you have, actually a bunch of you have during this presentation. Don't worry, I know you did that before the discount, the coupon code we're offering here. We'll give you a refund tomorrow. Just write into support@collegeaidpro.com. But within your platform, you can just say upgrade or talk to an expert, okay? Put in the coupon code early20, right? And you get 20% off, okay? So the premium version of our software, you can put in an unlimited number of colleges there. You can sort based on who's going to give you the most money in financial aid, who's going to give you the most money in scholarships. That's great. At a minimum, do that. It's a no-brainer. If you regret it, write in and say, Matt told me I'd get my money back, and fine, we'll give you your money back, okay? You're not getting it. But what I would recommend above that is if you do the Premium Plus Expert, okay, you get an hour with anybody on our team. It could be with Brian if you have admissions question. It could be with me. It could be with Peg. It could be with the director of financial aid at Harvard, MIT, USC, folks that have been doing this for longer than any of us have, okay? The top experts you're going to find in the world. You can have an hour with them at any point over the next year, okay? If you purchase the Premium Plus Expert tonight, use the coupon code early20, and again, only the live registrants will get access to this. And at any point over the next year, again, you can use that hour. It could be tomorrow, it could be next week, it could be when your CSS profile comes out next year. It could be make sure that this is a good list of schools for our kid. It could be help me during the appeals process. It doesn't matter. I just don't overthink it. Okay. At a minimum, you should do that. If you don't kind of identify as like the ultimate DIYer around this specifically, you're probably a candidate for one of our, what we call Wake Me When It's Over packages, right? The price point's completely different, but so is the deliverable, right? You get to work unlimited, right, in a lot of these ways with some of our experts, in some cases two of our experts, right? If you want all hands on deck for financial aid, we do your FAFSA for you, we do your CSS profile for you, we help you identify which schools are going to give you the most money, we negotiate with the colleges, we help you figure out how to pay the bill, right? That full service for our financial aid package, okay, starts at $29.99. If you're an underclassman, you'll see that right now on if you're a class 2024, it's $4,000 because the price goes up as we get closer to D-Day, so to speak, right? But if you get in earlier, it makes life easier on us. On you guys, you get a steeper discount. If you decide to get involved with that in the near term here, you can get a $500 discount. So what I would do, Peg, do you have the if it's too much of a leap tonight, right, to spend something like that, which I think for most people it is, book a call with us, book a free call with us to learn more. Is this in fact the right package for us? And we can kind of talk through all of them, right? Because we have our financial aid only packages, we have our admissions packages, and then we have our combinations, right? Our admissions package start at the lowest price point and deliverable. You get one-on-one access to one of our experts. Now, if you want, Brian still has some room left in his roster. His fills up the quickest. If you were impressed with him tonight, as I am typically, and most folks are, there is some urgency there. We have a great team of experts, but Brian fills up the quickest. So if you wanted to work with him specifically, there is some urgency there. And the kind of lowest package that we offer for just admissions, it's one-on-one with Brian. It's up to 20 hours. It's him working with your kid to build this list of schools, to make sure they're nailing their essays and everything else that comes with the admissions process. And then if you package those with our financial aid services, you get a bit of a discount there as well on top of, tonight's coupon. So if it's something that you want to buy, you can let us know, and we can, you can do that tonight. If you want to talk to somebody first, you can do that, and the coupon is good until next Friday, a week from Friday, so December 8th. So you just want to book a call with somebody on our team to, again, ask your questions before you take this big financial leap, which we understand it's a big.
Yeah, and this call is meant to chat about the Wake Me options, right? So that's what if you're not sure about which one, or you want more detail, there is a question here. If they want to sign up for the financial package and then they're not sure about the admissions, but then they decide later they want it, we'll work with them about getting that included, right?
The short answer is yes, right? We'll facilitate that. We'll make that happen, right? The short answer is yes. We can bolt
and
that.
And then here's one more. They have a sophomore. So when would this full service, when would these packages make sense with a sophomore?
Yeah, so I mean, we're able to provide value on both fronts right away. I mean, as you've learned, you juniors are already in your base financial year, so this is you're almost at the end of it, right? So for you sophomores, your base financial year starts January, a month from now, essentially, right? A month and change from now. And obviously, from an admission standpoint, the urgency is less. It's not like Brian's going to start working on your essays when your kid's a sophomore. He's going to be staring at your course selection and things like this, getting to, but the volume is not going to be what it is, again, for the 2025s, where you guys are going to hit their ground running, next week, basically, for those of you that sign on with him at this stage. And I don't know if you've had anything to add there, Brian, but that's
so we have a few 2025 families that have already started, and as I mentioned earlier in the call, we're in the process of building kind of productive college lists with them right now, talking about their academic interests. And so again, I think by starting now, you take a lot of the stress out of the process, and that we're not worried about deadlines at the moment, or how many essays do I have to do in a small amount of time. And we're going to build out a schedule for each individual student that they can feel confident with. These families are getting, as I said, close to 20 hours. That's a number of meetings throughout the spring and the summer and the fall that you can count on, as well as, unlimited access to me through email, that I can answer questions and make sure that you can get kind of the confidence that you need behind your applications from an admissions standpoint.
Yeah, no, thanks. And it's like, look, we've got a great team, and even if you didn't sign up for this 6 months from now, or if you chose to sign up for this 6 months from now, we're going to be able to help you. You'll pay a little bit more, and you won't be working with Brian. Again, we got a great team, but if you're sitting there going, I want to work with this guy, his roster will fill up. I would, if I had to guess, certainly by the end of the year. So that's where there's a little bit of urgency with him specifically. But again, at a minimum, if you think that you want to do one of these Wake Me When It's Over packages, book a 15-minute call. If not, again, at least get the full version of the software, right? Don't overthink that, guys. I mean, we're looking at $90,000 a year, so let's not trip over pennies, so to speak, or whatever that phrase is. you know, and at least book an hour with us, right? That 15-minute call, like Peg said, is not to dig into your situation. That's what the hour's for. But if you want to make sure that, hey, should I do the admissions? Should I do the combo? We have more comprehensive admissions packages that obviously the price point is higher. But if you wanted to get understand what that's about, you know, certainly do that. And yeah, the short answer for sophomores is we're going to be able to provide value today. Okay, if that's something that you want to do, you don't have the same urgency that juniors do. Is how I would answer that. But I think any of us, if you asked us, the earlier you get started and engage in this process, the more you're maximizing your odds for a more successful, probably a little bit less stressful end result, right? I think in short. But anyways, we're 6 minutes over time here. Appreciate everybody staying on. Brian, appreciate you staying on, man. I know you're going to meet with a class 2025 family right now, I believe, as you said. And Peggy, I'll see you out there tomorrow, pal. You go get some rest.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Everybody, thanks, guys.